It was Christmas Eve, 11:15 at night. I was 22, broke, and working for DoorDash because the holiday surge pricing was too good to pass up. I almost declined it. I wanted to go home, drink eggnog, and forget about my credit card debt. But $50 was $50. I accepted the order. 4 large pizzas and wings from an Italian place that was about to close. My phone pinged with one last order, a $50 tip. The drop-off location was deep in the boonies, about 8 miles out of town, down a road that the snowplows usually ignored. I finally found it. A long gravel driveway that wound back into the woods. When I pulled up, the first thing I noticed was the darkness. The drive took longer than expected. The snow was coming down hard, turning the pines into white ghosts. My GPS signal died 2 miles from the destination, leaving me to navigate by house numbers on mailbox posts. But it sounded like Times Square. The house was a small single-story cabin. No porch light, no Christmas lights. The windows were black squares against the wood siding. It looked completely abandoned. Even from inside my car with the windows up and the heater blasting, I could hear it. A party, a loud one. I could hear the thumping bass of music, the roar of a crowd. Dozens of people laughing, shouting over each other, glasses clinking. It sounded like they were packed in there shoulder to shoulder. I grabbed the thermal bag and stepped out. The cold air hit me like a slap. It didn't make sense. If there were that many people inside, where were the cars? The driveway was empty except for my sedan. I walked up the porch steps, scanning the ground. The snow on the walkway was pristine, unmarked. No footprints leading from the driveway to the door. Wait, there were footprints, a single trail, heavy boot prints. But they didn't come from the driveway. They came from the woods. But halfway to the porch, they doubled back, like he had been pacing, waiting. That was the second red flag. Then I heard it, a distinct high-pitched laugh, a woman's cackle. I stood at the door and listened. The noise was overwhelming. It sounded like a loop of generic crowd noise you'd hear in a movie, mixed with Christmas music. It sounded like a woman, but the pitch was wrong. Too even, too measured, like someone had practiced it. It pierced through the low rumble of the conversation. The exact same laugh, the exact same pitch, the exact same interval. I raised my hand to knock. My hand froze in midair. No answer. The noise was too loud. I knocked anyway. DoorDash. I knocked harder, pounding my fist against the wood. The lock clicked. The noise inside didn't dip. Nobody said hush or pizza's here. It just kept going at the same volume. A man's face appeared in the gap. He wasn't dressed for a party. He was wearing a heavy camouflage hunting jacket, zipped up to his chin. A thick beanie was pulled down low over his forehead. The door didn't swing wide. It opened just a crack, maybe 6 inches. The noise was deafening now that the door was cracked. It blasted out into the cold night, but I couldn't see past him. It was pitch black in the hallway. DoorDash, I said, my voice shaking. I can just leave it here on the porch if you want. He smiled, but it was tight. Hey, just in time, he said. He held up his hands. They were empty. No, he said. He pushed the door open a little wider, blocking the view with his body. It's freezing out here. Bring it inside. My hands are full. Come on, he said, stepping back. A gust of air blew out from the house. It didn't smell like pizza. It didn't smell like a party. It didn't smell like food or perfume or body heat. It smelled like damp earth, mold, and cold, stagnant air, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. He stopped smiling. Just put it on the table, he commanded. His voice dropped an octave. Don't be rude. I'm not allowed to enter the house, I lied. Company policy. Ha ha ha. Inside, the laughed again. He reached out with his left hand to grab my arm, trying to pull me over the threshold. As he lunged, his hip bumped against the door frame. Silence. The laugh cut off mid-shriek. The music died. 1 second, a roaring crowd. The next, dead air. The man froze. His hand was still reached out toward me. In the sudden quiet, I heard the faint whir of a cooling fan spinning down. I looked past him, into the dark hallway. My eyes adjusted to the gloom. There were no people. There were no streamers. There was no furniture. Just a single folding metal chair sitting in the middle of the empty room. And on the chair, a portable PA speaker duct-taped to the back of the chair. The tape looked old, yellow. He had done this before. The small green power light was fading to black. The man looked at the speaker, then looked back at me. His face changed. The fake hospitality vanished. His eyes went wide and hollow. He looked furious. He realized the lure had broken. He lunged for me again, faster this time. "Get in here." I didn't think. I reacted. I swung the heavy thermal bag with both hands and smashed it into his chest. The pizzas inside crushed against him, knocking him back a step. I turned and sprinted. I flew down the porch steps, slipping on the ice, scrambling on my hands and knees to get to the car. I heard his heavy boots hitting the wood of the porch. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the lock button. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled the keys. He was at the window. He didn't yell. He didn't bang on the glass. He just stood there watching me. He was perfectly still. I got the engine to turn over. I threw it in reverse and gunned it, fishtailing wildly down the driveway. In the rearview mirror, bathed in the red glow of my taillights, I saw him standing in the middle of the snowy drive. He watched me go until the trees swallowed him up. I called the police from the main road. When the detective interviewed me an hour later, he asked me to describe the sounds I heard. I tried to explain the party noise, the loop, and there was this laugh, I told him, my voice cracking. It was mechanical, like, ha 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 ha. The detective stopped writing. He glanced at his partner. Neither said a word. They went out to the house that night. They found it empty. No man, no speaker, but they found something else. In the back room, the one with the window facing the woods, they found a sleeping bag, a camping stove, and a cardboard box filled with delivery bags. DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, all neatly folded, all washed clean. I quit DoorDash the next morning. Sometimes I hear laughter at parties, real laughter, and I count the intervals, just to make sure.
It was the first weekend of February, and I finally had 2 days off in a row. I lived alone in a small rental house on the edge of town. One real bedroom, one spare bedroom I never used, and an attic hatch tucked inside the spare bedroom closet. The spare room was basically a dumping ground for boxes I never unpacked. Saturday afternoon, I was in the kitchen when I heard it, a single thud from upstairs. Not a crash, not loud, just heavy enough to make me pause with my hand on the cabinet door. I went up to check anyway. The house was old, it made noises, heat ducts popped, wood settled. I walked room to room, opened the spare bedroom door, looked under the bed frame that wasn't even there, stared into the closet. The attic hatch was shut, the little hook and eye latch looked like it was in place. I didn't look closely, I didn't think I needed to. I went back downstairs and forgot about it. That night I fell asleep on the couch with the TV on low. Around midnight I woke up to silence and the faint hiss of the furnace kicking on, and then another thud. Same spot, same weight. I sat up and listened. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no creak of boards, just the house breathing around me. I told myself it was an animal on the roof, or a branch, or the attic settling. I went to bed. Sunday morning, I came downstairs to make coffee, and something felt wrong. Not obvious, not someone broke in, just small things that made my brain snag. The cereal box in the pantry was turned the wrong way. A bag of chips I could have sworn was on the top shelf was sitting lower, like it had been moved and put back in the wrong place. The kitchen chair nearest the counter wasn't tucked in all the way. I stood there in my socks staring at my own pantry like it was going to confess. I tried to be logical. I hadn't photographed my shelves. I didn't inventory my snacks. It was completely possible I was imagining it. Still, I started paying attention to little details the rest of the day. Cabinet doors, the angle of the deadbolt, whether the back door latch felt tight when I pulled it. By late afternoon, the paranoia faded the way it always does when nothing happens. It was just after sunset when I heard the thud again. This time, I didn't even think. I stood up and walked straight to the stairs. Halfway up, I heard something else. A click, quiet, precise, like plastic tapping, plastic. I froze on the landing with 1 foot up, 1 foot down. Another click, softer, then nothing. The hallway upstairs was dim. My bedroom door was open. The bathroom door was open. The spare bedroom door was closed, exactly the way it always was. I stepped toward it anyway. I'd bought a cheap door alarm a few years back, one of those little stick-on ones that chirps when the magnet separates. After the first thud, I'd actually dug it out and stuck it on the inside edge of the spare bedroom door frame facing into the room. It made me feel stupidly better, like I'd done something. I reached for the handle, turned it. It stopped halfway, like something on the other side was holding it. My stomach dropped. I tried again, gentle, then harder. Same result. The latch wouldn't retract fully, locked from the inside. I took 2 steps back so fast my heel bumped the baseboard. My hands went cold, my mouth went dry. I whispered, because my brain was still pretending whispering made it less real. Hello? No answer. Then I heard movement. Not in the hall, behind the door. A soft shuffle, a weight shifting closer. My body decided for me. I backed down the stairs too quickly, almost missing a step. At the bottom, I turned and ran for the front door. Behind me, upstairs, another click. Then the spare bedroom door creaked open. I didn't look back. I yanked the front door open and stumbled out into the cold. The air hit my lungs like a slap. My breath came out in thick white bursts. The porch light made the snow on the railing glow dirty yellow. I ran to the end of the driveway barefoot, phone shaking in my hand and cord knife. When the dispatcher answered, my voice didn't sound like mine. "There's someone in my house," I said. She asked for my address. She asked if I saw anyone. I told her I couldn't go back inside. I told her the spare bedroom door had been locked from the inside, and I heard it open. 2 squad cars showed up fast, maybe 8 minutes, maybe 15. Time did that stretchy thing where it didn't make sense anymore. They went in with flashlights and hands on their belts while I stood in the snow in sweatpants and a hoodie, watching my own front door like it belonged to someone else. They cleared the downstairs first, then upstairs. One officer came back down and said, "You said spare bedroom." I nodded so hard my neck hurt. We went up together. The spare bedroom door was open now, wide enough that I could see the dark interior. The little door alarm was still attached, but the tiny power switch was set to off, and the battery cover was slightly open, like someone had pried it up. My skin prickled. The officers checked the room. Empty. They opened the closet. That's where the air changed. A stale, lived-in smell drifted out. Old sweat, damp fabric, something slightly sour like instant noodles left too long in a trash can. Behind a stack of my boxes, tucked into the far corner of the closet, was a nest. A blanket, grocery bags, crumpled wrappers, 2 half-full water bottles, a small pile of clothes that weren't mine. One of the officers crouched and lifted the edge of the blanket with his flashlight. More wrappers, a cheap lighter, a knit cap. He looked up at me. "How long has this been here?" he asked. I swallowed. They pulled the boxes out. The officer reached up to the attic hatch above the closet. The hook and eye latch wasn't sitting right. When he touched it, the metal shifted, loose. The wood around it was splintered, as if something had been forced and then pulled back into place. He angled his flashlight into the seam. Pink insulation. Dark scuff marks. A trail where something had been dragged across the joists. The officer's face tightened. "He's been using your attic," he said, and his voice went flat in that way that meant he'd stopped trying to make it sound normal. They went up into the attic. They called for another unit. They checked the crawlspace access. They checked the roofline from outside. No one. No footsteps in the snow leading away from the front door. Nothing obvious in the yard. Just the nest in my closet, like proof that someone had been close to me for longer than I could stand to imagine. Before they left, one officer asked if there was anyone who had a key. I said no. He nodded, then looked at the spare bedroom closet again. "Sometimes they don't need a key," he said. After they were gone, I didn't go back upstairs. I sat in my living room with every light on, staring at the staircase, listening to the house settle and pop like it was trying to act normal again. At some point I realized my hands still smelled faintly of adhesive from that stupid little alarm, and I couldn't stop thinking about the switch. Off, not broken, not dead battery, just turned off. Like someone had been standing inside that room, in my house, close enough to reach out and calmly silence the only thing I'd done to protect myself. I slept at a friend's place for a week. When I finally went back to grab clothes, the spare bedroom door was closed. I didn't touch it. I just stood at the top of the stairs and listened. Still, then, from somewhere above the ceiling, faint, distant, almost polite, a single thud.
The first time I saw it, I thought my brain was doing that thing it does in deep winter, turning shadows into animals because it's too quiet to be safe. It was January, the kind of cold that makes your nostrils stick together when you inhale. I'd driven out past town to a public access lake I'd been to 100 times, parked under a line of bare trees, and walked down to the ice with a cheap headlamp and a folding chair. No cabins on that side, no plowed road noise, just the lake, the wind, and the long creak of frozen water shifting under pressure. I wasn't even ice fishing. I was there because I couldn't sleep, and the lake always made me feel like the world was bigger than whatever was eating at me. I told myself I'd sit for 15 minutes and go home. I made it maybe 5. A dull thunk traveled through the ice, like somebody dropped something heavy far out near the center. Then another, then nothing. The sound carried weird on a frozen lake, flat and distant, but also right under your feet. I turned off my headlamp and listened. That's when I saw the silhouette. Out on the ice, maybe 100 yards away, something dark moved between the faint starlight and the snow. It was low to the ground at first, like a dog running with its belly close to the surface. Then it rose up, too tall, too slow. It took a few steps, swayed and lifted both arms wide, rounded shapes that made a familiar outline. A bear! My stomach did that hard drop. Then my logical brain kicked in immediately, because black bears don't wander across open ice in the middle of winter. They're not supposed to be out. And even if one was, it wouldn't look like that. It looked like a person trying to remember how a bear walks. I should have left right there. Instead, I watched, because I hated how much it freaked me out, and I wanted to prove to myself it was nothing. The bear stopped, turned its head, and faced my shoreline. Even from that distance, I could tell it was looking at my exact spot. I clicked my headlamp back on without thinking. The cone of light hit the snow in front of me, bright and useless. My hands were clumsy in my gloves. I aimed the light farther out. The beam thinned before it reached the silhouette, but it was enough. The bear raised one arm slowly and waved, not a paw swipe, not an animal motion, a human wave. The hair on my neck stood up. I stood up so fast my chair tipped. I grabbed it by the back and folded it one-handed. I started walking back toward the access point, trying to keep my pace normal. I told myself the simplest explanation was a stupid prank. Someone in a costume, someone filming something, someone drunk and bored. I kept repeating that in my head as my boots crunched along the packed snow. Behind me, the ice thumped again, closer this time, then another. A rhythm, like something heavy stepping fast. I didn't run. I didn't want to give whatever it was the satisfaction of seeing me panic. I kept walking, jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Halfway to the tray line, the wind shifted, and the smell hit me. Wet fur, like a dog that's been outside too long, mixed with something sharp and synthetic, like cheap cologne sprayed on plastic. There shouldn't have been any smell at all out there. The air was so cold it felt sterile. I stopped and turned. The bear was much closer than it should have been. Maybe 50 yards now, moving in an uneven loping gait that didn't match the distance it was covering. The costume wasn't a full-body realistic suit either. It was bulky and wrong, with shoulders that sat too high and a head that bobbed like it wasn't attached properly. And then the bear did something that made my throat go dry. It put one hand to the side of its head, like it was adjusting an earpiece. Then it crouched, pressed its palm to the ice and tapped 3 times. Thunk, thunk, like it was testing the thickness, like it knew exactly what to do out there. I backed up without taking my eyes off it. My heel found slick ice under loose snow and slid. Just a little, but enough to spike panic through my ribs. The bear stopped moving. Still, it stood perfectly still, arms hanging like a statue on the lake. I forced myself to keep going. I didn't look back again until I hit the trees, because I needed cover between me and that open white. At the access, my car was the only one left. I'd noticed a second set of tire tracks when I first arrived, but whoever they belonged to must have left earlier. Now it was just my little sedan and a hard silence. I'd left my car unlocked. Out here, I never bothered. There was no one around to steal anything. I fumbled my keys, got the door open, and as soon as I sat down, the warmth inside the car felt wrong, like I'd walked into a room that somebody else had been breathing in. My windshield was fogged on the inside. I hadn't been in the car long enough for that. The smell was there again, faint but undeniable. Wet fur and that chemical cologne trapped inside like it had nowhere to go. I slammed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys into my lap. I started the car on a second try. The headlights washed over the snowbanks, the trees, the empty access road. Then they caught something on the edge of the lot. a pile of dark fabric in the snow. For half a second, my brain tried to make it into a garbage bag. Then it moved. The bear suit was crouched behind the snowbank near the driver's side front tire. Close enough that if I'd walked around the car instead of going straight to the door, I would have been right on top of it. The head turned slowly toward my headlights, and I saw the face inside. Not a bear mask. A man's face, bare, red from the cold, with wet hair plastered to his forehead. He was wearing the suit like a jacket, unzipped, half on, half off, like he'd been changing out of it fast. He stared at me through the glass, eyes wide and bright in a way that didn't look scared. It looked excited. Then he smiled, and the smile didn't match the rest of his face. It wasn't friendly. It was a private joke. He raised one finger to his lips. He mouthed the word, "Shh." I threw the car into reverse so hard the tires spun. The back end fishtailed, and for a terrifying second I thought I was going to slide straight into the ditch. The man stood up in the headlights, and the bear suit fell open around him, black fur flapping in the wind. He took one step toward my car, and that's when I saw what was in his other hand. A short ice chisel, the kind people use to punch holes for fishing. He lifted it once, like he was weighing it, then pointed it at my windshield like it was a promise. I hit the gas and didn't stop until I saw streetlights. At home, I called the non-emergency line. I told them there was someone at the lake access in a bear suit hiding near cars with an ice tool. Later, an officer called me back. He said the access lot was empty. No bear suit, no footprints leading to the lake, no tracks besides my tire marks. He paused before he added, like he didn't want to say it out loud, "It's been snowing lightly out there. Wind's picking up. It'll cover a lot." I hung up and stood in my kitchen with all the lights on, staring at my own fogged window. Because the last thing I remembered wasn't the chisel or the smile. It was the smell inside my car before I ever sat down. Like he'd already been close enough to breathe. And the second set of tire tracks I'd seen earlier, they hadn't left, they'd just parked somewhere I couldn't see.
That's all for tonight. A fake party with a laugh that never changed, a spare bedroom that was never empty, and a man in a bear suit who got to the car first. Now I want to hear from you. Rate each story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Which one kept you up? The delivery trap, the attic squatter, or the frozen lake? Hit like if any of these made your skin crawl. Subscribe if you want more. Stay safe out there.